strength and conditioning and sports science industry for over 15 years now. So yeah, no, like
I learned from the last one I did.
Yeah,
me and Nuthi went out, and all the good stuff is in the car.
We can just talk about random stuff instead of like specific questions. So, because this is Weston's Crossing, so a port of a map. Maybe I'm used to my mum and dad having good maps. That's right.
Should I keep going?
Keep going, yeah. Always keep going. Like so, a few years ago, essentially I like trying to dive into bigger things. Like I found out essentially I have a fear of success rather than fear of failure. Some people think I still have a fear of failure, but we worked this out through a psychologist and hypnotherapist and all this kind of stuff, which is kind of cool.
One?
Sorry?
Do you see one?
Yeah. I haven't seen a psychologist for a couple of months now, just because of cost, to be honest. So, because the guy, some depends who people go to, but mine's like $270 an hour.
Yeah,
so,
they're not cheap.
Yeah, so anyway, but with that, it's one of those things which I decided to. So here, I believe, what is this road here? What's that road there? English Court. English Court. If that is one of these, so it's not that. Must be up here. Keep going. Keep going. Windy road up here. That's right. Well, either way, at least we know our way back. Just follow the road. So, the one thing when I found that out, I didn't actually decide to go against it. Like I went against what I was told. Like I was like, I'm not going to do this because I know I'm going to lose these people. But even though I know that's not true, it's a really bad way to think about things. But I did think about that anyway. Thought about it that way anyway. So it was only in the last 3 months I decided to go, you know what, I'm actually going to finally decide to work through this, which gets you through some uncomfortable times, right? And even there was a point where this is so that's Rose Lane, keep going. So even when, and this is what I really love about Keto, she'll call me out on certain things, and I know, this is what I mean when I say certain people pander to me, I'll make excuses and people allow it. I don't like people allow me to make excuses. That's why I also, as much as I allow excuses at times, at the right time, I don't like excuses, because I think it's just putting yourself in a position of comfortability instead of uncomfortability. And so it was, probably only 4 weeks ago. Actually, I kind of had a breakdown in my car a little bit, when I actually arrived at Lions, and had a good cry, and I told Nikita, and she's like, perfect, that's the uncomfortable feeling you want, right? I was like, yeah, I know, and that's the hard thing. It's literally, it's hard to get push past that point. Keep going around there. Sorry. And I told, I messaged Cannon, one of the girls from the soccer team as well, and told her as well that I was like, I'll be in soon. I'm just having a bit of a cry in the car. So literally, it's one of those things where once you hit that point of uncomfortability, it's going to suck. It's going to hurt. You're going to potentially cry if you cry. If you don't cry, that's fine. But you're going to feel a position of uncomfortability. If you think you've pushed past a barrier without any feeling of uncomfortability, you haven't pushed past a barrier. You just lied to yourself enough times.
And you're getting comfortable lying to yourself.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. I've done it before. I've done it plenty of times before. We all do it. But when you finally get to a point where you're breaking past that barrier, you will feel very uncomfortable. So
here we are. I think.
Let's keep going. It's Northwood Road. We'll see. We'll see.
We'll make the road.
Yeah, exactly. So, otherwise, we've taken the wrong turn. So, but again, we've been chatting, so distractions. So pushing past those kind of barriers, I think, are really important. And when we go back to talking about can someone become open-minded, they absolutely can. One, I also believe they need to be in place if they want to, because if you don't want to, you will fight against it, and you will create all those excuses as much as you want. But sometimes people will say they're open-minded, and they'll be very self-reflective, but they'll be reflective without anybody else's input. And when you are reflective without anybody else's input, you've got bias, right? So as soon as you've got that single point of vision of bias, you've got no one else to pull you up on things. And so you need someone else to feed back off, because you can tell them certain things that from your perspective, and they might be like, no, like it's not the way to go. So yeah.
That's a really good point, actually.
So, and that's why I like to, like, say the meeting we had the other day, where I called it the critical meeting, where I had all the, like, everyone just provide feedback. Where I said, I don't want excuses for what happened during the year, like any of that kind of stuff. I just want pure feedback. I think it's those kind of things. And I was like, I was expecting, like, cool, this would be like a good half an hour of people just saying things. I was like, it's an hour and a half of getting grilled. I was like, ooh, that's good. I like it. I was like, nothing was really surprising to me, which is good. But at the same time, I was like, when you're getting, like, critiqued and hammered for like a good
hour, that was an hour
like,
session.
I think you got to like 60 minutes, and like my ego's like, oof. So yeah.
Hey, you asked for it, right?
No, exactly right. Yeah, on purpose. So yeah. So you need another party to be able to call you out on stuff. So I've been there before, where I go, you know what, I am very self-aware because I'm very self-reflective, and then as soon as you spend time with a psych or another person that starts to ask other questions, you're like, oh,
maybe I'm not.
So that's why I also value people seeing a psych, even if they're not having troubles, because it's a good way to get feedback from them, just asking about like asking questions for where you want to go, where you want to be, all that kind of stuff. So
it'll be fine. Because I'm 4-wheel drive, hey?
It's like you've got a 4-wheel drive for a reason. Yeah. So yeah, I was like, that shouldn't have collapsed there. So anyway, going back to what I was saying is, I think that's why it's important to, you can see a counsellor, you can see a psych, you can see anyone that's going to ask questions that'll challenge your viewpoint as well. So you might, like, a lot of times psychs just want to know what you want to get out of sessions. They don't want to have to question everything about your background all the time. They just, okay, if you want to get more out of it, you go, you know, I want to be, out of this session, what I want to do is be more self-reflective, get more out of this in regards to challenging myself. And so they'll go, okay, cool, we're going to ask some questions about this, but they'll ask a bit more about the background of where you want to be to begin with. So so it's like, okay, what is happening that you want to be more self-reflective on, that kind of stuff. So yeah, now I'll ask good questions and you have to answer them. Real good psychs just ask good questions anyway, right?
Yeah.
They don't tell you half the stuff, you've got to figure it out yourself.
That's something that I picked up from you working with you, is that when I ask you a question, it's like you ask me a question. and I think that's like one of the marks of like a really good coach.
Sometimes I get ranty way too often though. So I was like, oh whoops, I was meant to ask a question. There goes 20 minutes of ranting. So because
that's like, to me, that's what like a mentor, what a master does. Like a seafood came from sort of martial arts thing.
Oh yeah,
it's seafood dust, right? Like gets you to actually think about your own question and how to get out of it yourself, rather than just do this, do that, because that doesn't really teach anything to anyone.
And that's essentially like, if you go onto the topic of self-organization, it's the same thing. Like our mind works in the same ways, right? Like it's even when I'm gonna sidebar a little bit, but also on the same point. Oh yeah, should have paid attention here. I'm going up that way by the looks of it. That's a private gate.
I am going to just
Stop here.
deflate my tire. Yeah.
Okay,
And
that's
then we'll go up.
That's cool. So I should hold my thought.
Oh. Your opinions on like life
Do you want to
life
face it
coaches?
that way or this way?
Sorry. Yeah, I will soon. When you start talking.
Okay. It's a very generalized question. So
I think there's a lot of online coaches now, right? Like, and I'm moving into that space too because I can't be in a physical gym at the moment, and also there's so many life coaches.
Yeah. You mean the 22-year-old life coaches?
Yes, correct.
Life coaching course. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like,
I'm gonna listen to them life experience.
Yeah, it's like life experience is so valuable, and I always say, when we talk about like relationships, a lot of my friends ask like why I'm single and stuff like that, and then what's my sort of limit, what's my minimum age?
Yeah.
And I say, like, age is just a number.
Yeah.
But then life experience really comes sort of after 25. Yeah. I feel. Yeah. So probably nothing younger than that.
Well, and in regards to obviously relationships, is one thing, but if you want to contest that, life experience for some people come at like 14 when they're like an abusive situation with like their parents and all that kind of stuff too.
Yeah,
right?
and that's why I say age is just a number, but in general sense, like if you don't run through that in your early...
Yeah, at the same time, you're not going to get that at 14-year-old. Bad thing to do. So no, I get what you're saying in regards to that. Like, I think life experience is all based on literally your own self, right? It's purely individual because your lowest low is strangely enough the same feeling as someone else's lowest low, even if they've gone through like the darkest times of like attempting to commit suicide versus you might have just had your bike stolen that you really value. Like, but if that's your lowest of your low, like everyone's lowest of low perception is still the same, which is pretty obviously tough to kind of recognize at times too, because you're like, oh look, there's more feelings involved than just thinking your bike's been stolen. And I was like, yeah, but like that might be their perspective. They've grown up in such a high level state, and this is I'm going to get really political or ranty at this point. This is why classically white males get really shitty when women get all these days and they're like, where is my day? I was like, you've had your fucking centuries of days. Like literally, like all we're trying to get is some level of equality, and you're having a hissy fit over not getting the right say. I was like, but someone that actually spoke about this is they really actually feel like, and I'm going to generalize the whole white male thing, right? Like not every person is the same, but white males have the privilege. Like that's literally a thing. But as soon as they say they don't, because other people are getting all these extra benefits, I was like, no, you've literally had the privilege for the last however many centuries, because that's colonization. But white men really do feel like they've been what's the word? That corner.
Hard done by. It's just not fair.
Yeah,
Life's
exactly.
not fair. Yeah.
What I'm trying to think of the word. Like the prejudice against it, like right? Because they feel they're not getting their say. I was like, this is literally what every other minority has felt for the last however long.
Yeah, welcome.
And you finally feeling what that feels like, but that's not even on the greatest level. You just feel like your voice hasn't even been taken away yet. Like you're just getting, like other people are just getting a say finally, and you feel like they're against you just because they get a say and you don't have the final say. Like, so it's the same kind of thing when we talk about people's lowest of lows. White males with all their privilege, their lowest of low is actually like women or like the indigenous people actually having, or like First Nations people having a say, which may put white males at slightly less of a privilege than they used to. So I think when we talk about life, we really do have to have a look at other people's perspectives, and sometimes it's harder to accept, because when you really start to look at what other people go through, it's pretty tough. And when you when you start to actually be around those people and see how they perceive different actions and different words, it's pretty eye-opening. So yeah. So
empathy is one of, like, spending time with someone and actually growing some empathy is actually a good way to come out the other end with gratitude.
Yeah, but some people don't even grow that. They just hear someone complaining. It's like, well, people aren't complaining for no reason, right? Like, some people do. Some people, I mean, we're in a society where we looked at the negative, and like the humans have, like, what is it? I think 5 and 8 emotions. 3 of them are
5 and 8
emotions.
What do you mean by 5 and 8?
So like, so they've got, I forget exactly off the top of my head, but 5 and 8 emotions in regards to, like, that aren't learned. So it's like, and I'll come back to what they are specifically, because I forget exactly what they are specifically. But I think it's 3 are negative, 1 is positive, and 1 is neutral. And so the neutral is like surprised or shocked, because it can be positive or negative. 1 is essentially joy. So like, it's a natural feeling, joy, which is kind of like curiosity as well. Like when you see kids kind of like smiling, like that's a joy, right?
Yeah.
But you've also got I forget exactly the 3 others, and I don't want to do it injustice, so you can look them up. And so they're all negative. So we are actually more negatively driven than positively driven. So, and this is why the media can feed on negative news stories, because we will look at them more, and that leads more of us to complain. But also, it's the reason why when something negative happens, we'll tell 10 people, whereas something positive happens, we'll tell 1. So I think we have to look towards how we can build empathy and how to be grateful, rather than just spending time with someone, because sometimes we will take that as just someone complaining. And someone complaining might just be complaining. But there might be someone actually really reaching out too. So there's a lot involved in it, and I think it's the time spent with someone to really realize, are they complaining, or have they actually been I guess mistreated as well. And because you can kind of tell if someone's complaining versus if someone's actually feeling like they've been mistreated as well. Because usually they'll have I don't want to generalize, because every single person is different. Usually people that have been mistreated will be quite successful, to be honest. They'll push forward in a lot of things because they've gone through that adversity, right? Yeah. And so if you are a person that is struggling to be successful and then you're complaining, speaking generalities, you really haven't undergone that adversity yet. You haven't gone through those challenges yet. You've also got to define, this gets into another whole philosophical situation, is how to define success and failure. And I was asked this question recently, and I tried to define it, and I was contested on it, and we had an agree to disagree moment in regards to how to define it. But I think that also depends on how you define that as well. So there's a lot of definitions we've got to look at, but you've also got to look at, are we defining something for the sake of defining something, or are you defining it for the sake of moving forward? Because sometimes we look at ideology more than action. So I think that's a big thing we've got to look at as well.
So 2 things out of that. Ideologies. I've been talking to like family and some friends who wants to start making change to their bodies and stuff. Yeah. But they're looking at this ideologies, this research, high level sort of 1%ers that make the tiniest percentage of difference. And a lot of people sort of use that rather than, you know what, let's just do the little things. Yeah. Right.
You just got to start. Start. Like, do you want to add more to that, or?
No, that's it. It's like,
so I think a lot of people know who James Clear is now, who wrote Atomic Habits and that. So I haven't actually read Atomic Habits. I own the book. I've lent it to multiple people, but I still haven't read it. But fun enough, it's all similar to a lot of other processes when people talk about habits or creating habits is where you start small. And so like one of the things, if you're struggling, just set a goal for the day, right? Goal for the day. It doesn't have to be a massive goal. Like it could literally be, I want to get this done. And you want to put a focus on that during the day. That's your goal of the day. Get it done before the end of the day or the end of business hours, whatever it is. You want to get done. That's your one thing. You might have other things that pop up, but you're still going to get that one thing done. That's all it is. And then from there, what you'll notice is once you start getting that done, you'll start getting back to the moment of where you're procrastinating, you're not doing these other things again. So you've got to start to set bigger goals or more action tasks. And then what you'll notice is suddenly you're then creating habits of doing more things, just purely by taking action. I relate it back to fitness, where people want to take the supplements like leucine and your carnitine to get those little percentages of losing fat and building muscle.
Yeah,
like,
don't worry about it.
Just get in the gym, lift some weight, and eat some food. That's it. Like, I'm not gaining enough muscle. Eat more food. Like, I need to recover better. No, you don't. Sleep. Just go to sleep. Sleep earlier. Get off your phone, and then lift and to eat. Like, it's as simple as that. So yeah, with a lot of people think of all these extra things you've got to take. Literally, okay. So when I originally decided to build muscle, I built muscle because I wanted to prove. Like, I played rugby league, but at the same time I was a small rugby league athlete, trying to direct these other rugby league athletes in the Trust Super Cup. So I gained 15 kilos in 8 months to show them I know how to gain weight. And people are like, oh, what did you do? I was like, I ate pasta. Like, I ate literally a 500 gram bag of pasta for lunch. Like, and like, how do you eat that much? Like, I don't know. I just kept on eating it, add some salt and drink some water, and then you have other stuff with it, like tuna. Like, it's pretty easy. People try and overcomplicate these things, and they go, doesn't that taste bland? I was like, not with salt.
Herbs and spices.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Bit of chili.
Yeah. And like, there's a comedy act from the guy. I forget who the comedy act, who the comedian is, and he talks about this thing. He's talking about how the Brits literally colonized. He goes, they literally made the world a shitter place, right? Like the colon, like that's why it's called colonization. And he talks about, he goes, but the thing is, they literally left their country to go find herbs and spices from other countries, and then all they use now is fucking salt and pepper. Like, where did the spices and herbs and spices go? You just colonize other countries for their spice and then go, nah, salt and pepper's pretty good. Like, he's got a good point. He's got a very good point.
Man, a lot of comedians do.
Yeah, you explore the world for herbs and spices, and all you do is take the nation and then go back to salt and pepper. Like, yeah. I mean, I feel I'm ranting against my own kind of heritage.
What is your heritage?
I did one of the DNA tests, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm looking forward to being like some sort of random kind of thing, like 1% of this, 1% of that.
Yeah.
And then it came back, it was like, I am 100% white, Eastern, Northern, and Western European. I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. I was like, literally pure like Anglo-Saxon male, basically. Alright, well, there's no kind of surprise in there. Yeah, I was disappointed, to say the least. So, yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, but it's I don't know. There's a lot of kind of topics you can get onto, right? And I think also we do get too politically correct nowadays.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Like, I think have you kept up to date on the Netball Australia story?
No.
So I think this is quite an interesting story, right? Because one of the girls, she tried to get an exemption for wearing the Hancock Prospecting logo on the shirt, on a jersey, because she was unhappy with what that person's dad said in the 80s about the Indigenous people. And so this became a big thing where you can read what you can read a news story, but you can't get their actual opinion. So you can't. I don't think we have the right to say much about it. But I feel from reading a few things that I should probably direct you, but
Sorry.
unless we just stop here. But
I'm just stopping here for a second,
so unless,
just so you can go have a look at that lookout.
Okay. So it's like, so you can't say too much about it because unless you ask her the questions, like all it is media reporting, right? Like, but I feel it's one of those things where I reckon she tried to want to keep that private to get an exemption, and she's become this big. She's been the person that's kind of taken it down, and Hancock Prospecting pulled the 15 million from Netball Australia, which means they lost all their funding, like a lot of funding, and it's been put back onto her, which is pretty bad. And one person wrote an article who is one of their cousins, I believe, so she's an Indigenous person as well, and say, like, the fact that we're still judging, it's quite interesting, and I think it's very this is very based on your own opinion here, because they were saying, when are we going to stop basing a new person's, like this person's or the daughter's or son's actions on their father's or grandfather's opinions or actions, because it was what their father said in the 80s, but it doesn't represent who this person is now, right? And so, but she wanted that exemption because of what the father said in the 80s. However, she has done a lot for a lot of Indigenous rights, a lot of things, but also she owns mining companies, so they've also done a lot of bad things, right? So, I mean, having these opinions when you just read media articles, you've got to ask the right people, and those people, what their actual opinions are. You've got to find out what, say, the people in charge are actually doing, and what their opinions are. Like, as much as you can have these opinions, you got to actually ask the people involved, rather than read a news article. But I think the biggest thing is exactly what that person said, is we've got to stop judging a person's actions and behaviours now on their grandfather, their great-grandfather, great-grandmother, their parents. Like, it has some play, but it might be a positive or a negative influence in the fact that, you know, some people have their parents kind of convince them to do one thing or the other, and the kid goes exactly opposite direction because they hate their parents. That's right. Yeah, could go either way. So, I mean,
that old story of, you know, the alcoholic father and twin kids. Yeah. One goes off not drinking at all, and one is an alcoholic.
Exactly right.
Like, yeah, exactly right. You really can't judge someone by their parents or their family members. Yeah, exactly
right. And so I think it's a tough situation for this person to be in. Although they've made that judgment, I think they also wanted to keep it private. Yeah. And then it's been blown up in public. And so it's like, okay, people wanted to keep their opinions private, but people are saying her opinion was public. So it's like, you don't actually know. But I do think there is a point of the fact that sometimes we've got to consider what is our opinion in the public also doing to what we are doing outside of it ourselves. Do you know what I mean? So like you're going to take a stand for something by signal virtualing, or virtual signaling, what it's called, or are you actually also taking action by taking action? Do you know what I mean? Rather than just going, I want to make a stand for this, versus are you taking other actions to help this too? Yeah. I think one is a step forward, but you've got to eventually take action too. So I'm not by saying that, I'm not putting that on that person at all. I think it's a pretty shitty situation to be in. But I think we need to take action more than we do.
You're just talking in a general sense,
exactly right,
instead of just being a keyboard warrior.
Exactly right, yeah. And I'm just using that example of kind of how things are blown out of proportion as well. So, I think that's a pretty important thing, is to take action more than we just talk about things. Yeah. So anyway, I'll go look at. Wanting to know about, like, so we're going into online programming, online coaching. How does that relate to like life philosophies for you, and why does that connect for you?
For life philosophies?
Because you were asking my life philosophy, then you said, you started by saying, we're going to online programming and online coaching. So that's why I was like, how does that relate?
In what sense? I think like you can learn from anyone from anywhere. It's such a great thing now. You can really choose who you want to train under or whatever, or you want to learn from.
So what do you think of the pros and cons with each of them?
you just can't get that human connection
Yep.
in online world.
Yep.
You can get pretty close, I suppose, like if you do real-time coaching. But still, just having that sort of jokes with someone, that facial expressions,
Yeah.
little things like that, it's so hard to get. But the pros is, I think a lot of, well, for one, if you're going to do online coaching, I think you've got to be somewhat independent and have a couple of, maybe a year or two training age.
Yeah.
It's super hard, and I don't think it will work with someone who's completely brand new. I've been trying to think about how to do that and think about how to create onboarding processes, and I think it's just way too hard. I think a lot of people would prefer having someone there and just run them through it.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is having people that are motivated themselves, which is the toughest part to find, because I mean, I've gone through that stage where you get people that just don't do it themselves. They're really keen, and then they don't do those sessions. You're like, why? You know, I didn't have time. It's like, but you would have had time. You just didn't want to commit to it, to do it yourself. So I think the biggest thing there is human connection. Like, so it's quite interesting that even though you can connect people by Zoom, by FaceTime, all this kind of stuff, there's something that we don't have in research, or hasn't really been established yet, I believe. I mean, someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but in establishing the real effects of actually in-person human connection. So like being in person with somebody compared to being online with somebody at the same time, same conversation, there is going to be a greater happiness and joy for the person being there in person. And I don't think really know why yet, except we just can establish that humans are made for connection. Right? Like, yeah.
And just being in the presence of someone, you can kind of get this sort of vibe, energy, whatever you call it, right?
Like what he was talking about, I think we hold, even though we don't think so, a lot of times, identity to our own weight and our own image, right? So like people say they can't hold a lean position all the time. It was like, yeah, well, they absolutely can. I think they've tied their identity to what their image may look like. And so people struggle on, the biggest thing I see, I've worked with boxers a lot, particularly weight cutting, is people struggle to use smaller portions happily because they've grown up with bigger portions of bigger meals, but they just move less nowadays, so they can't afford those bigger meals. Like the biggest thing was a boxer 5 years ago. He was a 52.5 kilogram boxer, and he said he's struggling to cut weight. I said, okay, cool, what are you eating? Happy to steak in that. And he said, oh, like normal steak, like 250 grams. Okay, cool. You weigh 52.5 kilograms, palm size. And he's like, what do you mean palm size? Palm size is your max right now. That's what you should be eating. Don't need to eat any more than that. He's like, really? Yeah, try that. He tried that. Within like 2 days, he lost the weight he needed to. I was like, I told you. I said, a lot of times we think we need to eat, okay, it is good, we need to eat more food, right? But we also need to do more exercise. And I think we see a lot of things where it's 80% diet, 20% nutrition. I can guarantee if you're struggling to lose weight, if you add exercise, you will lose weight. But also you'll find that your hunger increases because you've exercised and wants to feed it. I think it's a catch-22 situation where you need exercise and you need food. You need both of them. It's a relationship that works together very well. You can not exercise and still cut weight, but you've got to be comfortable with the small proportions that you're going to eat as well. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with that. And then you get tied to that identity of how you look or how you want to look, and then suddenly you think you can't stay at that lean weight, but people do it all the time. However, I do think he said something that is wrong. How he said athletes stay lean throughout the entire year. I was like, actually, athletes don't stay lean the entire year a lot of times.
Yeah. Just look at Paddy the Baddy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and then they're obviously fighters as well. But like team sport athletes, they don't stay lean all year round. They're definitely lean. You're going to have team sport athletes that are going to be lean purely because the amount of activity they do and to consume the amount of food they do to not gain weight. But obviously they had to get there in the first place too. But they're not trying to stay lean. If you look at them, they're actually not that lean. They're not like ripped six pack, but they're lean in the fact they've got a good power to mass ratio as well. So
now moving into like there's a difference, right, between male and female, and what's sort of a healthy, air quotes, what's a healthy fat body percentage? So visible six pack as such.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? Ladies being, I suppose, not as healthy to have six pack all year round, whereas it's probably not a bad thing for guys.
Well, it can still be a bad thing for guys. Depends on where they're at, right? But I think I say this a lot when I say the biggest thing. But really, I think that most people forget is the visible appearance of abs is the fact that you've had a program that builds abdominal muscles, the transverse abdominis. If you just do planks, you're probably not going to have your six pack abs. Like, you can have really good core strength and not have abdominals.
Yep, correct.
A good example is how lean runners are. I mean, they won't have the muscles or the six-pack abs, but they'll be lean as hell. So, and people trying to claim this bullshit about sprinters and runners, and I know which one I be, and you're like, yeah, it's a different power to mass ratio they need. So try and use a sprinter's body and run 42 kilometers. It's not going to happen. But they're both going to be lean, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at male and females, as soon as a woman has lost her period, then you have lost your homeostasis, basically. Like, as bad as that sounds, but once you've lost the period, you are either not eating enough, you're not sleeping enough, you're undergoing a lot more stress than needed. Your body is in a point of stress, and a lot of the times when you're going down to that weight level below where you are starting to get abdominals or lean out quite a lot, sometimes you're at that point below where you're feeding yourself enough. And basically, women need a lot more fat levels for the hormones to circulate and function properly. But for them, that relates more to fertility rather than performance. Absolutely, you can drop lower if you want to perform better, because you're looking at a better power to mass ratio. However, there is a lot to say that making sure you still have your period and you're actually ovulating can get a lot more out of performance because of the fluctuation in hormones too. So I got Range Road Forest Drive.
I'm guessing we just go straight up. Man, look how much
So I think that's the thing. We also don't know enough about the menstrual cycle and fertility relating to women's health because of poor research too. So, like, as an example, the classic percentages are below 3% is unhealthy, and you start to organs start to shut down because there's not enough fat for your body to function. For males, it's below like 10% for females.
Right.
So, but I don't think we have enough evidence to say what really is in regards to shutting down organ failure. That may just be an issue in regards to less than 10% is fertility issues. Like, there's not enough evidence to say what a low body fat is for women for it to affect organs like men's low body fat levels. So I think we rely on old evidence a little bit too much, and we need new evidence on that. However, for ethics to approve something, to say we're going to take someone to a body fat level to see when their organs shut down, not going to happen. So we need to kind of have make a few assumptions, unfortunately.
And you said before, if you want to keep dropping fat percentage to increase performance, that's you know, you can kind of do that. So is that an okay thing for people to do? I suppose you've really got to know what you're doing, because you only want to do that for a short amount of time, and then you want to bring them back to normality, right? And
yeah, exactly. So you've got to be cautious on how low you drop and when you're going to drop for it as well. So being light makes you faster. It's as simple as that. Hello, little goanna. Is it? Yeah, it is a little goanna. Being light makes you faster. There's a lot of evidence around this. Then they look at the 40-meter sprint times of all your NFL players, and they put that into a linear graph. The lighter you are, the faster you are. It's a pure linear graph. So even though you can be fast, and there's every now and then you might think there's some outliers, there are some outliers, but
there's always going to be outliers.
Yeah, but the lighter you are, the faster you are. Simple as that. So when you look to maximize how much weight you're going to push off, if you're running a 10k race, you want to be lighter. You don't want to be 100 kilos. So when you're trying to compete against someone, you're 80 kilos, someone's 70 kilos on a 10k race, if they don't beat you, they need to train better. Simple as that. Because they should be able to blitz you. A good example, one of my mates, Clint Hall, I messaged him because I saw he went on a regular 10k run, right? It was like 45 minutes. I was like, mate, that's a regular 10k run. That's good, that's fast.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, it's not too bad. I think his fastest is like a 36 or something, and a minute. And I said, oh mate, my fastest is only 40. I said, how light are you? And he goes, at the moment it's 75 kilos. I said, that explains it. My fastest was like 85 kilos, and also I'm currently 105. So it's a big difference.
Well, you said 70 kilos and 80 kilos in terms of 40 kilometers race. How much of because I know the ability of us using fat source as energy works better for sort of more so endurance sort of stuff. That plays into long distance running, wouldn't it?
It's how you train, because what they found is the elite marathon runners still basically have all the glycogen stores left at the end of the race. Because that's like, even though they're running at 21 kilometers an hour or 20.8 or whatever it is, most of the glycogen stores are retained because they have such a high threshold. They're still using that fat oxidation for their energy sources rather than carbohydrates. So it's how you train basis will give you that basis of where you're going to get your energy from. I think that's key there, is because if you don't train and you just try and run fast, you're going to burn through glycogen stores as well. And in regards to, so I was going to say, I'm going to add something to that, is when we talk about rather than glycogen stores and energy, we want to also talk about, okay, when you talk about the 40 kilometer race again, right? You're 80 kilos and you're trying to stride out. You have the same levers as someone else, and you both stride out 1.27 meters per stride. Over that race, that takes 100 newtons roughly, 98.1 newtons per stride that you're going to create, right? Per stride. Now if I get my calculator, and these, I hate seatbelts when they try to jam. If I get my calculator.
Whip it behind you.
Sorry?
Whip it behind you.
Yeah, that's what I just said. So, yeah. Get my calculator and I do this, right? 98.1 newtons. I could just say 9.8 kilograms, or 10 kilograms, right? And multiplied by gravity.
Gravity, yeah.
Because newtons. By, we're going to say the elites, we're just going to say they're 180 to 200 cadence. We'll go the lower number, 180 strides per minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say this 80 kilo runner did the marathon in 3 hours. We say both of them did it in 3 hours, so it's 180 minutes, right? Yep.
Stride per minute, yeah.
So 180 minutes. You're looking at 3.17 million extra newtons. So I'll do that again just to make sure. 98.1 newtons by, so that's per stride,
mm-hmm.
which means you've got 180 strides per minute, and you're going for 180 minutes. 60. 3.17 million extra newtons per, like, for the race. That's on top of what the 70 kilo runner is doing. So overall, you're probably doing a lot of newtons already. Like, if I actually just went 70 kilos, so 700. So if it's 700 newtons, I go to 70 by 9.81, 686. 686 by 180 by 180. So 22 million newtons is what a 70 kilo runner will produce per stride.
And then 3 million on top of that, so it's like...
Yeah, so 3 million on top of that. What's that? Is
7 times, no.
3 divided by 22. Oh, so I don't know. 22 divided by 3. Why can't I do that? No, that's what I want to do. Yeah, 3 divided, not multiplied.
Yeah.
So it's 13%. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's more calculations for biomechanics into that in regards to, like, when you push off, the stride, like that kind of stuff. But we're assuming everything's the same, so that's our only variable. So it's 13% difference. That's a lot. So when you think of it that way, you're like, well,
yeah,
that's a lot of extra force for 10 kilos. So when people think weight doesn't matter, it does.
It does. 100%.
So when we look at weight and where we want to get to, performance comes to another conversation is what are you willing to sacrifice, right? If you want to be the best performer, you're going to have to sacrifice health at one point.
Yep.
When people think you can be the best and most healthiest condition and still be the best performer, I think you're lying to yourself, and I think people are lying to you, because you've got to sacrifice, and they might go, you know what, I've still been able to maintain my physical health. I was like, but what about your mental health? What about your social health?
Yeah.
Like, there are more components to just physical health. So we've got to look at all those kind of aspects.
Yeah. Still haven't been able to find the right words, but I want to do a post on how performance is not so healthy.
Yeah.
It's like the whole spectrum, right? The unhealthy to healthy to performance.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Like, I think for that post, I think it's also a spectrum of, right? Like, I'd say it's a U-curve for health. So it's unhealthy to healthy to unhealthy.
Yeah.
And that's performance versus sloth.
Yeah.
So, and you've got this middle ground.
Yeah.
And it'll be, what is it? Everything in averages is the best way to live. Like, it's bad.
Everything in moderation, yeah.
Everything in moderation,
well, that's it, right? Like, well, the devil is in the dose type thing.
Yeah.
It's like, water's healthy, but you can also drown in it.
Exactly right, yeah.
You can also, like, flush out all the vitamins you just put in.
I think the best one is, like, when you look at healthy, right? There's two ones I would say, but both relate to radiation. So it's number one, and people go, this comes from natural sources. So does uranium. You're not going to eat that, are you? No. It has like a 56-year half-life or something like that. Something stupid. And something else, one of the byproducts is a 256-year half-life. Something stupid as well. So anyway, the other thing
for uranium, or
Yeah, I forget exactly the half-life.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So like Chernobyl has only just become, it's half as safe as it was, sorry, it's twice as safe as it was as of like, I think it's a couple of years ago, because the half-life officially kicked in. Anyway, the other part is talking about everything in moderation. There's this cool graph which relates to radiation, but it also relates to everything else in life, where we look at, if we have nothing of something, it's actually unhealthy for us, and our risk of death goes up. But if we have a little bit of everything, our risk of death goes down. But then we have a lot of something, our risk of death goes up again. And this perfect example is radiation. People go, oh, radiation is bad. UV rays, radiation. Potassium in a banana, radiation. Metal and steel produce radiation. Like everything, we are exposed to radiation in small doses all the time. When it starts to come to larger quantities, there's an issue. But overall, even iron produces radiation. Iron we need in our bloodstream. We need to function off iron. Small amounts, great. Large amounts, bad. Yeah. So everything on a small quantity is great. That's my point about that.
I don't know how good this would be to watch back. All right, where are we? We're
The gantry.
We're at the gantry up in Mount Mee.
The Aguila National Park.
Yeah. I'm with Kurt Vogel. I just want to thank him to start off with. High-level operator, high-level S&C, and he's entertaining me doing what I want to do, basically.
Thanks for having me. So it's good to be here. Good to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, just a drive off-road, basically, to get to this point. Cool. Can you just run us through who you are, what you do, how long you've been doing it for, your little bit of your background, where you get all your wisdom from? Because there's plenty there.
Other people. I'm Kurt Vogel. I guess as a person, I'm just Kurt Vogel. As a person outside of that, what I do is I try and provide better environments for other people than when I entered. So, in short, I guess. So, in long, I've been in the strength and conditioning and sports science industry for over 15 years now, and from youth and amateur sport to elite professional World Cups, Olympic Games. So I've done my fair share in sport, but I've also run veterans programs, corporate programs. I've done general health and wellness programs, and so I've done quite a bit under that banner. So in that time, I'm on my third master's. Doesn't mean I'm smart, it just means I like to learn, and I like to commit a bit of debt to my learning. So now I'm doing research work, which is less debt, which is nice because you don't really have to pay for it, the government does. And then I guess in regards to how I learn and what I learn, as much as I have the degrees, I learn from other people. So I get around to talk to coaches a lot, not just S&C coaches, but coaches, because I think when you're in sport, the one reason people want to play sport or get into sport is because they like the sport. They don't like the S&C, they don't like the extra forms you have to fill out or all that other kind of crap. Particularly if you go to professional level, like all the media work, they get in the sport because they love the sport. Even trying to change the landscape of trying to be a role model for people, it's because they like the sport. So I think we learn a lot more from coaches a lot of times initially when we're in the athletic performance space than we do from the S&C coaches. And then if you can combine knowledge from both, then I mean that's where we get most of our wisdom, right, is from other people, and then from other people and textbooks. Then you learn other things and you have different philosophies and theories and test them out yourself. And I've been fortunate enough to work across a lot of places and a lot of sports, so I get to see what different sports hold in regards to their philosophies and how different people and different organizations, different businesses hold their philosophies. And I mean, I just formulate from that too, I guess, and have my own ideas from that. So I don't think we can come up with ideas without seeing what other people do.
Yeah.
And as the Twitter CEO said, is find someone else's idea and then just make it 10 times better.
Yeah, right. I spent a bit of time with Cody last month doing the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because you're a lecturer and you're like so involved in the actual field, what do you think is like the worst, well, not the worst, what are the downfalls of the current education system? And I know you've posted quite a few things about managing people's expectation when they're coming in and do like an exercise science degree and being a generalist rather than specializing on something. Can you run us through a little bit of like your opinion on someone who's just jumping into the industry, and they're thinking of working with a high level or whatever sports team, and what the reality is versus someone who's actually just doing a fitness course and actually continuously upping their skills that way. What are the different points?
I think the first point is we need to recognise that the university degree is literally like a Bachelor of Arts for sport and exercise. Like we tend to think sport and exercise degrees are coaching degrees, but they're actually exercise science degrees, which are general. So people could be cardiac techs, they could go into exercise physiology, they can go into physiotherapy, they can go into coaching. So it can be anything, and I think that's where we first of all think just because you got a degree you should be able to coach. I mean, it's definitely a component of it, but it doesn't mean you should be a great S&C coach because it's not an S&C coaching degree. Sport and exercise science degree. We have to recognise it's a science degree. So it's just one part that sometimes we miss, sometimes we don't. When we start to look at how it compares to, say, Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, unfortunately, there is no pathway yet for the sport and exercise scientists. They have, when you look at accrediting bodies, they have the same authority as a personal trainer. So Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, or we'll just say Cert 4 in fitness, because you have to do Cert 3 before Cert 4. Cert 4 in fitness has the same authority as a exercise scientist via ESSA. They have to fill out the same form to get an exercise physiologist to sign it off to be able to run a program for rehab as each other. So there's currently no pathway. I'm not sure what is happening with that. I believe ESSA is trying to do a lot of things, but they pretty much, when you look at it, exercise physiology is their bread and butter. They've done a lot for exercise physiology, which is fantastic. When you start to look at coaches trying to get higher and get further in the industry, I think we, as coaches, tend to look down on Cert 4 and fitness trainers because they go, we haven't done a degree. I know some people that are great at what they do without having those qualifications. So like, I think the best example is Luke Lehman from Muscle Nerds. He runs his own educational components and courses. Does he have his fitness qualifications? No, but he is very experienced. He is a great wealth of knowledge, and I think like I do one of his courses. I haven't, but it's not what he's doing is not what I'm trying to specialize in. So, but I think every time we sit down and chat, like, it's fantastic. Like, I learn from him. He's a great operator, and he does not have the sport and exercise science degree or the Cert 4 in fitness either. So you can be very, very good at what you do without a qualification. He runs education courses. So I think we have an expectation of, hey, I've got a degree, I'm better than this person, but no one's better than another person. It's how you use your education, you use your knowledge, you use your wisdom to impart that on others, or essentially create better options for people. So I think that's the kind of thing we need to recognize. And the other thing is, if we're looking to get mentors, because if you don't have a mentor, essentially you can be led down the wrong path by your own will and what you want to do. Because sometimes you think something is a great idea. Will it work is another situation. And then also, do other people want that idea at all? So you might go, this is a great idea. Have you asked anybody else if it's a great idea? Because it might not be. And sometimes we push forward with businesses that we go, this is a great idea. It's really missing, but it's missing in 10% of the population, which is not really a great business idea. So So when you look at mentoring, it's good to have, I believe, a mentor that is at your current stage of learning. So if you're a new level coach, I think you need a mentor that is good at programming and teaching that, because I don't think you need to go to the top level mentor, because they are more involved in leadership and creating systems. So you can have both, but then I think you need someone outside the industry, because they're going to give you another insight to something that you're not familiar with. And I think sometimes in sport, people are too involved in sport, they don't know what's outside of it. So when you think we don't have progress in sport in regards to our value with finances or anything like that, I think it's because we're like, but this is sport. The sport is like any other business. You just need to learn from other business instead of going, this is sport. So I think we need to stop pigeonholing ourselves and also judging others and pigeonholing them as well. So
okay. Cool.
I know there's a lot in what I just said there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I'll definitely be running through the tape again. I'm really appreciative of like the systems you've built here, because obviously I've actually met you through working for you with the Lions. There's not many people who do that in the industry, is there? Who do what you do? Like, what have you got currently going? Because I know you just build systems and you actually work with a bunch of teams. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people building different systems across sport and exercise in the exercise science space.
It's those opportunities that you create the
one thing I haven't seen people do is kind of what I'm currently trying to do, and that is trying to elevate the semi-professional sporting landscape. So we tend to create systems for private, we create systems for professional level. And otherwise,
for the weekend warriors.
Well, with there's not even weekend warriors. They're trying to make that sport, right? Yeah. So, and if you look at soccer, professional, so NPL and NPLW is classified as professional now. So, mainly I think it's because of the Sydney and Melbourne, like they have full-time athletes in that too. So, but when we start to look at systems, we seem to be creating systems for ourselves to do less work as trainers, rather than systems to provide opportunities for other trainers to come in and grow, but also create more professional opportunities for the athletes. So like with clubs, I'll go into a club, I'll try and bring a few people on board, so you can actually have a dedicated coach to each grade, rather than going, I'm rushing between these grades. And we've got a dedicated coach, you're going to have that opportunity to lead a team, but then you can help mentor the next person in that other level, and they can then learn off you as well, and you can learn off each other.
Yeah.
When, I think in this space as well, it's the big one is, when someone is sick, usually you're sick and no one can take anything. If you've got multiple people on board, you can now get someone to cover, and you can trust that person to cover.
Yeah.
If you're working on those systems that go through junior level all the way to senior level, then you've got a progressive structure. If someone needs to step up athlete-wise, they know the systems, they know everything that's happening. But also you've got coaches that need to step up, they know the systems, they know what's happening, and you can trust them to run things too. So what I'm trying to do is make sure that every team or club I become part of has multiple coaches, that has systems that can support each other as coaches, which then in turn support the athletes. And the biggest thing I heard from one of the managers that I worked with last year is, at the end of the pre-season, I said, what are your thoughts? How do you feel? Like, what's been going on with the girls? Overall, what do you think about how we've been running the program so far? And she goes, it just looks like you guys care. Like, the fact that if you're running off and doing something, they can go to Cody. If Cody's away doing something and you're away, they've got Viv, they've got Chris, and they've got Janaea. Like, they've got people they can talk to, and they've got people they can trust. And it's not just where you see one S&C usually attend to something and they go, sorry, I'm busy, I can't help right now. I'm busy, I can't help right now. They can go, oh, cool, Viv's free at the moment, you can go see Viv. Like, so you've got these systems in place that allow athletes to attend to priority situations immediately, that's kind of what I want to do. So that way you're creating a professional environment in a semi-professional space.
Yeah.
So it helps everyone up.
That's so cool, man. That's so good. Yeah, so good working with you. And that's just the abundance and like the growth mindset that you have, which I've like I want to learn from that.
It's nice that people want to learn. So,
yeah, well, exactly what you say before is like a lot of people, well, me included, we try to sort of build system for ourselves, not so much for the benefit of everyone else as well. Yeah. You work with a lot of female athletes, right? And female teams. This is a big subject that I kind of want to cover with you. What do you find is the difference between training guys and girls? Do you program for them differently? Do you think about do you do like a 28-day cycle for them instead of like a daily thing, or how do you? What are the big differences, and what do you do differently?
I think we've kind of got to break it down to individuals versus teams, because in teams they're vastly different. So you'll have in teams, women are generally socially driven and men are goal driven. Like, they both got goals, right? But if a team starts to fall down in the women's space, usually what you'll see is the social dynamic is broken down, whereas men could actually have a terrible social dynamic at times, and they'll fall down and then just start to blame other people. Whereas women don't tend to blame other people; they blame themselves as well. So it's quite interesting when you start to look at how you work with different environments. Like, and I think the perfect example is if you try and get people to pick teams. So you go, okay, there's a fun game. I want guys, men, I want you to pick your team. Two captains are like, yes, my players are here, my players are here. You tell women the same thing, I want you to pick your team. They're like, can you just choose for us? Because they don't want to be seen as picking favourites. So that's kind of what I mean by in regards to socially driven versus goal driven. Men don't care, and they'll just choose whatever they can to win. Now I think we're getting to a point where women have always been competitors. I think we're getting to the point where we don't have to change so much in that space, where women are realizing they're competitors, which is great. So they will start to do anything they can do to win. And it's really, I think it's really cool to see that shift in dynamic as well, where you've got some people that just don't care, or they do care, but you're just providing immediate feedback, and with that immediate feedback, they'll just take that on board straight away, rather than taking that personally or and worrying about how the rest of the group sees them. So, and again, it may be speaking in generalities, but working across women's sport for nearly a decade, you get to see it in every level, really. So, and that's where I guess good culture and good systems come into teams. Is if you can breed a good culture of that. If someone says something to you, regardless of where it is, emotion happens in sport. Take it as feedback, not as an attack. And if you can start to get people to recognize and realize that, you'll get a better response from the athletes in general of trying to grow more, and then you'll get less of that kind of social influence across that. But that's teams. Individuals, I don't really change too much, but women talk more than men. And women talk more than men in a way that you end up, a lot of times you end up bonding more with the female client than you do with the male client. They generally have more to say, because traditionally men like to keep things in a lot.
Internal.
So, but men are opening up more too, which is great. I think it's really great to see this shift on both ends. But like some of my favourite clients have been female, because we'll just talk crap for an hour whilst training, right? And so you can do that with men as well, but sometimes they just want to get shit done. So in regards to how I train them, I don't really train them differently. The only thing is, in regards to structure of sessions, not structure of sessions, more so intensity, I'll teach women about the RPE method more. So if you're rating, if it's a 7 out of 10 today, it's 7 out of 10 of how you're feeling, not 70% based on what you did previous weeks. So, because every single female has a different menstrual cycle. We have these averages that we look at, but realistically, it could be that they've got the same timing for the period. One person might ovulate, one person might not, but you don't know that because there hasn't been assessments done on these situations individually. It has been in cohorts, and current data looks at evaluating cohorts, but overall, you've got to look at the individual rather than as a group. So I'd say the only thing apart from RPE, educating RPE, so that way you know it's if they feel like crap and it's a 9 out of 10, they know they've got to drop weight. It's going to be a 9 out of 10 based on how they feel. The only other thing is based on experience. I'll add more hopping, stopping, jumping, landing in women's programs for athletes, because evidence shows the two things that influence risk of injury for women, generally ACL, is strength and experience. So get someone stronger and get them more experienced in decision-making processes on the field. So strength, one of those things comes into hopping, landing, jumping. When you look at how, I don't like to compare what was compared to what is, because it's a different situation. However, I'm going to bring this up for the sake of it. How often do you see in schools women playing games like hopscotch, like jumping, hopping games? You don't really see it much anymore. Same as even men.
Yeah.
And so you also see the high performance environments start at an earlier age. We need more of these activities and drills put into place, but we can also create games around that too. So I think they're the two biggest things, and that'll change, but it's not really a change, it's just supplementing.
Is there a link between pelvic floor health and jumping, stopping, hopping, all that sort of stuff?
Look, I don't know too much about that, but in regards to pelvic floor health, I can only relate in regards to whether a female will, what's the word? They'll either pee or be incontinent or whatever the word is. So you can actually get someone to, once you teach them about the pelvic floor, once they start to look at jumping, hopping, stopping, all that kind of stuff, they won't pee as much or anymore. So whereas you can see, and usually happens after pregnancy rather than beforehand, but hopping, jumping, hopping, stopping, skipping, all that kind of stuff, teach them about pelvic floor, and what you notice is they're like, oh, that actually feels far more comfortable. I can now do jumping.
Did you say do a lot more of that before you're pregnant, post-pregnancy?
So pelvic floor work you can do pre and post, but it's just teaching someone about it.
Yeah.
But that's probably the extent I know about it. I can't comment on any other aspects in regards to does pelvic floor health influence this or that.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yep. In terms of your menstrual cycle,
Mine?
You've done a bit of research in that field, have you?
Yeah, so that's what I'm writing my original thesis on at the moment. So
yeah, okay, yeah. And what can you tell us about some of the stuff there of your findings?
Well, it's the same as so a lot of what I'm writing at the moment is not even about my thesis. It's about other papers I'm trying to write in regards to changing the landscape on how we look at menstrual cycle research. So overall, you'll see as a cohort, and again, it's only a small cohort, so same as most women's research is small cohorts, which means it's a limitation, but you don't see any actual significant changes across the menstrual cycle in regards to maximal strength, and that's what I looked at as a cohort. But what you can do, as soon as you start to look at it individually, or you can actually pit people into groups. So like for my research, there was 2 specific groups that had the exact same pattern between the 5 phases of the menstrual cycle, where it's a negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. And then there was another group which was positive, negative, positive, positive, positive. So, and I use the word positive, negative as if you put a line straight in the middle of these things, what does it look like? And
that's just the performance.
And it's the same pattern. So because you've got the same pattern, you can group those and go, okay, is there a significant change with that pattern? And so there definitely is, but you can't tell that to a whole population of women. It has to be individually assessed. And so what I'm currently writing is, can we change statistics on how we evaluate menstrual cycle research? Because we need to look at it as either individual, or look at it as in using something like R, which is a software for statistics, to analyze patterns and go, this is the same pattern as these other 5 people. Now are there significant changes or significant differences? Whereas currently we look at a cohort, and the cohort could be all over, which means there are large standard deviations, large standard errors, but overall it just looks flat. So you've got no actual significant difference.
Yeah, okay.
But as smaller groups of people, you can. So that's pretty much the easiest way to explain it. So, because even when you look at, so one of the individuals, they were pretty much consistent the whole way through, and then premenstrual, which is 4 days before the period, their strength would drop drastically. And then if you're going to use a cohort of data to go, there are no significant changes that occur with maximal strength in regards to performance, and they're I think it changed like 20% drop or something. You go, well, I feel weaker. And you're like, are you weaker? Well, actually you are based on data, but based on research and how they currently do statistics, you're not. So how are we going to actually evaluate that? That's what I'm writing at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So yeah.
Any advice to people who are, for my 2 listeners? No. Any advice for women who actually do sport or train or just a general gym goer, as to how they should pull back or put the gas pedal on around their cycles? Just
be perceptive. So if you track your cycles, it's great. At the same time, if you find you've got an irregular cycle, or if even if you've got a regular cycle, it's good to actually test for ovulation, because if you don't have that, essentially you've got a deficiency somewhere in the hormones, which can still affect what you're doing in the gym and everything else. But at the same time, because you've experienced this for a long time, you might not notice any effect and any changes. So it's just being perceptive to go, okay, I feel weaker on this day. Are you actually weaker? And so you start to journal it. So you go, okay, I feel weaker today. Oh, I actually improved my maximal lift. I didn't expect that. So I'm actually stronger, although I feel weaker. Yeah. So it's being perceptive about those changes, because sometimes you might feel weaker, but you're actually not. Yeah. And usually a lot of times this is during the period. But after the first couple of days where the symptoms dissipate, but you're still in period, women will generally be at their strongest. And this is talking to women, this is what I've looked at in regards to just data collection. They'll also be the fastest. So
this is like in the week
first 5 days of the period. So it's usually days 2 to 5, because usually the first couple of days they've still got symptoms. And after that, usually they're stronger and faster.
Right, okay.
And so I'll say usually we look at data, so there's terrible data, but this is anecdotal from what I've seen.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah.
But it's quite interesting when you talk about perception, though. This is just something else to add to it, is women feel more terrible because of the symptoms, right?
But the performance outcomes
but they still have to perform if they've got a training session.
Yeah.
They still have to do things at the training session. I believe so many times we look at trying to adjust this, where they're so used to it that they feel like crap. And then as soon as they don't feel like crap anymore, they're like, hell yeah, I've got this boost. Like, I don't know if there's any actual data to support that, because technically there's a low level of estrogen, low level of progesterone. So you've actually got a lower level of hormones, but does that support being stronger? Like, how does the testosterone cortisol ratios match up? There's not evidence about it, really. So
yeah. And I know there's a little bit more, women are a bit more prone to ACLs through the Q angle, hip and everything.
I'll contest that, but yeah, anyway.
Please do.
Yeah. Continue question though. So
I just wanted to know if there was a link between the ACL injuries and the timing of the month, or
so in regards to susceptibility for injury, there's a bunch of research out there that says during ovulation there's a higher risk of injury for ACLs, but the funny thing is they say during ovulation there is a higher risk. Now they say that because they go, well, during this time there is an increase in, I believe it's elastin, and so your ligaments and tendons become more lax, so that way it's a looser joint. Now the funny thing is that doesn't actually happen during ovulation. It happens later in the luteal phase. So technically they've got the mismatch of information. But when you look at data again, are you looking at cohort or individuals, or how does this actually match up? So Dr. Sophia Nymphius, she's a person that got me into sports science really initially, and she's one of my people I look up to, and she's been a mentor to me in the past. So she does a lot in this space in regards to just looking at data effectively. And you look at all the data, you break it all down, the only two real things that affect risk of ACL injury for women are strength and experience. So how strong are you, and what are your experiences in the game? Now, I say that in regards to experience because you look at someone like, how many ACL injuries does AFL have in the women's game? Quite a lot.
Can you backtrack just slightly?
Okay,
so the reasons why ACLs happen.
So in regards to the reasons ACLs really happen is because of a lack of strength and a lack of experience. Nothing else. Even studies on the Q angle have assessed that the male versus female Q angle is only something like 0.8 degrees difference on average.
Right.
Like, it's really not that different. It's just sometimes like.
So that's an old research that we got to sort of step away from.
Correct.
The Q
Yeah.
angle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can definitely see.
This is why you got to keep on top of the research.
You can definitely see that some women have wider hips and flatter hips than men, and that's definitely going to affect how the femur sits. But it doesn't necessarily affect how it's going to influence the ACL, because how that person sits is how they move around as well, right? So based on experience in that position. So let's look at, I'm going to look at football, soccer. Generally, you'll see a lot of soccer players start at males start at 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. When do a lot of the girls start? About 8, 9, 10. They've lost 5 years of experience as a kid going through those critical periods of development, particularly when females are getting to that point of puberty, and before that time they've missed a bunch of years of soccer. You know what I mean? So that's experience of moving the ball around, how to change direction fluently. So, and then they go through puberty and the hips change, but the same as men's body change too, right? So
but you learn over time as your body change. You kind of grow with the experience.
Correct. Exactly. And so when you look at how to change direction, if you're not used to changing direction in a certain way, it doesn't mean you're going to be more risk of ACL. It means you're not as exposed to that over time enough times. So the actual point of no return in ACL is when you step, your femur goes to internal rotation, tibia goes external rotation, and you try and push off. And the point of no return is because you want to drive force that way, and this is doing opposite things, right? So that comes down to experience. So if you can decelerate, great. You see some people that have non-contact ACL injuries rather than rather than non-contact, I'll say linear running. That generally comes down to a fatigue state. So are you also doing things in a fatigue state? Are you strong enough that when you get into fatigue state, your muscle can still hold that force? So this is why all the hopping, stopping, landing drills matter, because the more experience you get, the better off you'll be. And then same comes down to decision making is, in a situation, if I'm competing against you and I've had 10 years experience and you've had 5 years of experience, and I need to beat you, or a ball is coming towards me and I need to stop that ball or catch that ball, whatever it is, my decision will probably be different than your decision, because I know how to move and pivot out of that position. I know how I'm going to land. And generally, someone with 5 years experience might go, oh cool, I need to do this now and I'm going to not focus on something else. So the difference between autonomous and associative stages of learning also matter with regards to the strength and positions of your joints and ligaments, really too. So strength and experience are really the big thing. So get stronger, get more experience. I
want to add, you said hopping, stopping, landing. I want to add tumbling onto that.
Absolutely right. So anything that that'll change your body in place of motion, really.
Correct. I find it so useful because there's a lot of times growing up playing soccer and playing basketball where I instinctively just judge that's going to be way too much impact. If I stick my foot down, I'd rather just go roll.
Exactly right.
And then continue on.
Exactly right. So if you look at people like, I'm going to call it skater sports, BMX, scootering,
where
skating.
You actually get to slide and...
like sliding, landing, like they will shit all over all your landing mechanic exercises, all the time. So you think, you know how to land? And then you'll see surfers land after like a 360 twist or 180 twist
Yeah.
in this really low
Yeah.
position. Now, if you look at how they land, they're not trying to twist out and push that way, right?
Yeah, because
Like
the board is actually
and
on them.
they're coming with it. And this is what, when you look at, when people talk about, oh, the knee comes in for ACLs, it has nothing to do with the knee. It's when
It's
this
the-
twists the opposite directions.
Correct.
Yeah, so-
it's the internal and external rotation
Exactly.
of tibia and your
Exactly.
femur.
And
Yeah.
most people just get
think
that
it's
wrong.
just a
That internal, only. So if everything moves together, it's great.
It's fine. Yeah.
Pretty much,
You
yeah.
do it all the time with your squats.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck. I had a thing. What do you think then with the? I don't know if you teach it in unis, but I know Exos teaches landing mechanics and a lot of other SNC providers, educators. What are your thoughts on teaching landing, like tall to shorts, step down, not step down, sorry. What do you call them? Stepping off a box and into a landing.
Drop jumps and all
drop
kinds
jump,
of, yeah.
What are your thoughts on those sort of drills instead of just kind of progressing people and let people self-organize? Because
I think they have. I think it's great in rehab process.
okay, yep,
But if you're starting with an athlete and they play their sport already,
they know how to learn.
yeah, like they might not know how to learn specifically doing this way. They might do it a different way, but you add it into a program purely for the extra force absorption.
Yep.
You don't have to correct a lot of the technique. They'll get used to it. And that's how they've been jumping and landing for a while. Why bother changing it? Are they going to get a worse injury by changing it? Because you've decided to affect their mechanics. It depends how old they are and how experienced they are too. But we have to jump to land a lot of times. You might think, okay, we can start our tall to shorts. Realistically, you're also going to get someone to do jumping in that program, which means they're going to have to land. So I don't do tall to shorts very often. I do it for a coordination thing to go, okay, we're going to go 2 feet up, 1 leg down kind of thing. Learn coordination patterns, but that's about it.
Yep, and centering yourself if you're landing on 1 foot.
That's kind of part of it, yeah. So, but otherwise, no, it's, I don't use a lot of it. I don't agree with a lot of it. I understand why there's systems in place to go, this is where we start lowest to the highest. But does it mean that's actually the lowest to the highest? Like, in regards to what their learning process is, you can literally start in the middle somewhere and go, you'll be fine. Like, push someone off a box. Like easy.
The land.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I get people to do like in regards to landings, from young athletes from like say 15 years of age up, I can do a single leg over bench jump. So they'll start with long leg, they'll push, drive enough force over a bench, cycle, and catch themselves. So
You've got me doing those before.
yeah, the difference you get to see, the difference you see is those that are experienced will jump over and just go stick. Those less experienced will be like, I need to stabilize. So that time to stabilization also matters. So and that comes down to strength.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. Violent segue. You mentioned shoulder before, and I was just got to thinking about my shoulder.
Yeah.
Can you shed a light on cortisone injection? Because I've spoken to some physios, and I don't know if the truthfulness of it, but in the lifetime of a human being, basically he says no more than 3 because it starts to change the structural integrity, I suppose.
Yeah, basically it starts to damage the tendons and the ligaments in that space.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
So once you have, I don't know the exact number, but more like a few cortisones, you start to wear away the tendon and ligament. So, which is actually counterintuitive and not conducive to actually repairing a joint.
Yeah.
So generally, I try and get people to steer away from cortisone. But all it is an anti-inflammatory specifically to that point.
Yeah. Okay. And that's all it does, but it does have some side effects like anything,
Yeah, exactly
and it's
right.
like wearing it down. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm of the same mindset, I suppose. Surgery, cortisone, whatever it is, external input, should be the last thing.
Yeah.
You should try and rehab it, work through it first. But I just want to know, I suppose, giving people some information to make the decision themselves.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Cool. Have you owned your own facility before?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I remembered you saying that to me one time. What were some of the hardships, and can you tell us a little bit of that?
I think a couple things is two things. One, if you're going to own your own business, don't have debt beforehand. But two, if you're going into business, you've got to make sure you trust your business partners well enough, and you've got to be competent to have them do what they do. So I had 4 people in the business to begin with, and the 2 people, and like, this sounds like an excuse, but it's not an excuse. We've accepted responsibility for it. I actually caught up with my old business partner yesterday. So we kind of got manipulated by the other 2 people in it to sign a lease earlier than we wanted to. And after I signed it, like I said, look, we still need to do some like plans, look at demographics, all that kind of stuff. They go, we got that sorted. All right, I trusted them. Instead of deciding to go, can you show me before I decided to sign? And after we signed and everything, I was like, all right, so what's contingency plans for the fact that we're in a flood zone? They're like, oh, we're in a flood zone? I'm like, alrighty. The one thing you don't know. 2, so we've got about 15 facilities, PT organisations within the same 5-kilometre radius. Like, what is the plan around that? And they're like, oh, is there that many? I was like, okay, what planning have you actually done? And they go, oh, we know the area a bit. I was like, okay, cool, but have you actually done a specific assessment on the area? And they didn't. So it is actually a nice area. So funnily enough, where you picked me up today, it was 50 metres from that place.
No, right.
Yeah, it just happened to be in the same place that I'm at.
Yeah,
now.
right.
So, and it flooded in 2015. So which is when we decided, we didn't close it straight away, but I think the biggest thing is when we signed that lease, and myself and my current business partner were not ready, but we got manipulated from different sides for us to both sign it. I was like, cool. And then within 3 months, they decided to leave the business. And so instead of having manager and accounting on board, it was just me and then my business partner who didn't want to do anything as part of it. He just wanted to help out with getting me going with it. It was just me doing everything. And so you could go, like what I've learned now is go, okay, you've got to definitely have in place the people you're going to rely on for accounting, for all this kind of stuff. But me being me, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to push forward. Can't afford to spend the money right now because I've got bills to pay, all that kind of stuff. Even to avoid having to pay a tax accountant, I read the whole ATO tax manual and did the tax myself, so which is a lot of pages. So those kind of things which you shouldn't do, should actually outsource correctly, but make sure you've got the right systems in place. Not the right systems in place. The fact you can implement things well enough, because I believe we had good systems, we just didn't implement well enough, and that's one thing I think is our biggest downfall. Is if you're not actioning what you've got in place, that's going to be your biggest downfall. So we had a lot of good ideas, a lot of things that should have worked, we just didn't implement well because we just didn't act on them enough. We had other things that we're doing, and I think that's probably the biggest downfall of what we did. So, but what we did really well, what we really liked, is I actually had students come down from different universities, and we had different education days and that, and it just spread through word of mouth, and we'd have like 1RM days and like 8-9 different people there just learning from QT and ACU, and
cool.
And then a couple of people from other unis learning, and
was that like an internship that you ran, or no, just
people
just come in?
Just it was actually free learning, to be honest. I should have charged, but we didn't. We allowed in the quiet times for people to come in and do whatever they need to do. Through different coaches that I had involved too.
Have you run internships?
I have. In regards to how structured is a different situation. So like I run internships where you've got learning progressions based on the person's goals rather than what my goals are for an internship. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So say instead of, okay, you're going to learn these specific things from an internship, I was like, where are you at your current place? Where do you want to go? It's nearly like a mentorship but internship. And then where do we want to get you through the next year in that space? So and then so you're still tied to something, and then make sure there's some level of education they're going to get as well.
Would you do it again?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like there's internships I still run here and there.
No, sorry, I'm opening up a gym.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I think the last time, like, I was going to continue running it, but after I closed the facility, so after it flooded, we actually had a boom of business. I forget the guy's name, to be honest, but He was fantastic. He started with it just before it flooded, and he got his wife in, he got his son in, he paid for his staff to do group fitness sessions there, and that basically kept us afloat for a little bit. And then it got to the point where we still didn't have insurance money back, couldn't replace a bunch of things, and it just looked like a shithole, to be honest. And we didn't know what was happening. Insurance company couldn't tell us. It took nearly 3 months to get that money back, to get insurance money, sorry. And so...
And you weren't in a position to hold on type thing?
Yeah, I was applying for different positions here and there. So funnily enough, with your old managers, Jason and Brett, so they were in Kusama Fitness. I even applied for a job there, and I could apply for different jobs around the place. I'd work at St. Margaret's for a little bit, just to tie me over whilst we were trying to sort out money situation. And then I actually had an opportunity at USQ, and that was through actually one of my exes. So she was really good in that. She started studying at USQ, and she told me about it. So I actually owe that to her, that she got me onto that position, and I applied and I got it. And I said to my business partner, I said, look, I can get double what I'm earning now, or I could still struggle again for another few years. I'm going to have to take that one. I've got debt to pay. You got debt to pay. And we've just got the insurance money back. We'll pay off a few things, and we'll go from there. And so we agreed to do that, and then split. So, yeah, ultimately, I'd like to start up my own facility again. There are plans in place, but that's yet to be revealed. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. What have you got going on now? Is there anything you want to?
A lot of things. So I think so for me, I've tried to push forward with some ideas in the past. So I've had a lot of ideas in the past. I've started doing them, but I decided to just pull back on them and not invest in them. There are things from different workshops that I'm going to be running for different clubs and groups, to like a rural youth athlete development program, to a sports science tech company, to facility, to a new podcast coming out. So there's a couple of different things I've got in the go at the moment. So there's about 7 different business ideas that I'm going to be putting under Revolve Athletic. Yeah.
Wow. Exciting times.
Yeah.
Just in time for me to move back to WA.
Yeah. Exactly. So, yeah. Well, I mentor a person in WA at the moment. So so she's actually going to be in Brisbane this weekend. Yeah.
Was that Sabrina?
Just for the conference. Yeah, Sabrina Sites. Yeah.
Let's talk about that then. That's the beauty of the online coaching world we live in at the moment. We did speak about it in the car, but I suppose just to get some stuff out there. What do you find is like the limiting factor? I know you asked me the same question. Now it's time for me to ask you to get your opinion. What's the sort of limitations? What's the benefits of it, I suppose, that you've seen?
I think the biggest thing is that people don't tell you everything when you're online, but when you're in person, having that human connection, people will talk to you more. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. So you miss things here and there. Sometimes people decide not to send you videos of their technique because they think it's fine, and then when they finally decide to go, yeah, I've been killing it, check out this video, you go, that is not right.
And then we have to go back to week one again.
Exactly right. So
have you got strategies to sort of address that?
Yeah, well, you can only do so much in regards to getting someone to send you videos. Like, you can go send me a video of every exercise you do, but then becomes micromanaging a person who doesn't want to micromanage the program. So they've come to you for a reason, but the more you try and push to get something from someone, even though they've come to you, the more they'll push away. So the more you give them freedom and go, you contact me for whatever you need. I'd like videos of these exercises because they're crucial, but the other ones you can, whatever if you want to send, you can send me, but you don't have to. So yeah, those kind of things.
Okay. I'm just cautious of your time too. It's 15:15. So to wrap up then, there's I suppose I just want a couple more pointers, because I know the limitations of, like, I'm a dummy. Let's face it. I can't reach research.
We're all dummies, so yeah.
And so
it's like when people go, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, neither do any of us.
But some have a little bit more experience, I suppose, in the field as well. And that's the importance of it. I think a lot of people, we're in this evidence-based era where people start pulling out research and sort of using it to make a point or to drive people onto something.
A cherry pick.
Sorry?
A cherry pick.
Yeah, cherry pick, that's right. But then you can actually look for an opposing view on a different research, how do we sort of battle through that? Because my way of doing that is just basically looking at following the right people, and in terms of, and what I mean by that is like talking to someone like you and actually making my mind up about how you view the world rather than your qualifications. Because like you say before, there's so many different things as to how is this research being done, and like with the female menstrual cycle and stuff, we can't really look at it from a cohort study, rather than like you really got to look into individuals. So what would be some of the sort of, what would be your advice for us? One, the people in the industry who's working as professionals who actually try to guide other people, and then for the layman, so just the general pop, how can we?
For the easiest way to say it is, for every piece of information you find that goes that is for your opinion, find something against it. So if you go, this supports my view, you go, okay, I need to find something that doesn't support my view. So just use keywords that'll go against what you say. So it's the same as following people, right?
Wow.
We sometimes follow people that we like to follow, but we get stuck in an echo chamber. So if you like, say, following Lucky Wilmot, follow Joel Seedman. Like, there's a perfect.
Should we follow Joel Seedman?
they're against your views, like, but it also challenges your thoughts. So, so if you avoid staying in like this little echo chamber of just these people just agree with me, then you're going to be in a better place overall.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And in terms of studies, then. Where do we go from there? Because I suppose I wanted to work with some semi-pro team, people who actually play a sport, and without someone like you creating those opportunities, a lot of us, if we don't have that paper, we can't do it. What would be your sort of advice to people who's jumping in and wanting to do that?
So I actually always tell people, particularly if they're looking for like interviewing jobs and stuff like that, contact the person in the role or above the role and ask them, what do you want to see out of someone applying for a position here? So when you know a position comes up, you've gone and taken those steps and those measures to do that. So it takes a bit of initiative to go out and talk to those people that are already in the positions. If you're in a semi-professional space and there is no position, just talk to the club and make one. Like, I've done that a bunch of times. So all you do is talk to the club and go, hey, I just wonder if you have any S&C services at all that you provide to the athletes? No. Any chance I can come down and watch what you guys do? And all of a sudden, you're going, awesome. Wondering if like you guys would be open to like some S&C at all, because like what I see, I think you guys are doing a great job. But I mean, I could take this off your hands and I could run all the warm-ups. I could give them strength programs, conditioning programs on top of what you guys already do, and just helps reduce injuries and improve performance even further. So, but you never try and push it. Unfortunately, in sport, people don't like you to push in. In saying that, CEOs and people in upper management, they like to be like forthcoming and very abrupt at times, because they just want you to cut through the shit. But people just below that, like the people that are leading S&C programs, sometimes they can get a bit defensive because they're worried about their position sometimes. Some people, really good people, will be like, fantastic, challenge me, try and take my position off me. That's what they should be like. And good people are like that.
Okay. Shit. I completely forgot about a big topic that I want to cover with you. Conditioning. I know we've had a lot of chats of it. Well, not a lot, but we've mentioned a few times where S&C coaches actually just big focus is just on the S, not so much on the C. And having done a few different courses, I find it's quite the same. And you'll have your opinion on just using mass as a conditioner. What else do you do for conditioning? What are some of the better ways of doing things?
So with conditioning, I think it depends on the sport for one, but I also believe in. I use mass as a prescriptor, not an actual method to train a lot of times. So like I'll use a test and get my maximal aerobic speed to prescribe values off that. It doesn't mean I use that for maximal aerobic speed efforts. I will, but not all the time. So same as max speed. I'll use max speed and I'll use those efforts to get an anaerobic speed reserve and look at that. I don't believe in doing running for the sake of running. I do believe the fact that you can build your aerobic capacity for recovery, even if you're not in a running sport. I think it's important. But when, as an example, boxing have recently changed their national standards testing to like a 3K run and very high standards. So they're trying to make boxers runners again, which I don't like. But everyone has their opinion. I think it should be shorter to show that you're not trying to make them runners. Like you just need to go max effort in a short period of time. So whereas like AFL have a shorter running test than boxing does now.
Really?
Yeah, so AFL is 2K, boxing is 3K. So
yeah, because
so I think it's, sorry to interject, but I think it's that's a point where you're testing to test rather than testing to improve aerobic capacity.
It seems like now that's they have the same sort of mentality as the old school soccer coaches, where a lot of it is just mileage, just go run for your conditioner.
Some of them, yeah.
How can we better educate that?
One, I actually believe in, if you want to go for a run, go for a run. It could be good for this. Like Headspace. I know a couple boxers that do that purely for this.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Like go for a run, but that's not your training.
Yeah.
You have to do training on top of that. So even with conditioning and how I run conditioning, I'll utilize different methods, but as long as you utilize a method that will go, okay, I'm going to increase aerobic capacity here, I'm going to increase aerobic power here, I'm going to increase lactic threshold, and also improve my alactic abilities here. So as long as your methods match those places, fantastic. Too many people just go mass. Mass is just aerobic power. Okay, where is your aerobic capacity, anaerobic power? Like where are all these components? And then you've got to look at agility, speed, like all those kind of extra components too. So I love, for a tempo block, which would be like for me it's like a 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 work rest ratio. Illinois agility test. Up to the markers, come back around the markers, up and back, and you get 2 times rest for what you just worked. Go again, as fast as you can. I think it's a really good way to just build that threshold a little bit. So, because threshold isn't about peak lactic, like where you feel the pain, it's about pushing the boundaries of lactic, where you start to just feel like you're slowing down, have enough rest that you can go again, and then go again. So, whereas most people think if you just flog someone, they'll get better lactic tolerance. They do in a certain way, but that's peak lactic tolerance, where like for rugby league players coming into season, I will do some of that work so they get used to that feeling, and they feel far better coming to the first game doing that than if you just tapered like traditional linear periodization.
Right. What would be some of the good resources for us to learn from?
I think, to be honest, in regards to conditioning, like classic super training is like one of the best. I think that's probably the best one to go to. Then
is that Australian?
Not Australian, no. Yeah. I think it's is it? Ooh, who does? Is it Mel Sif and Verkachansky or something?
I'm sure we'll have to look it up.
Yeah. Anyway,
wish I had a Jamie in there.
So yeah.
So, Jamie, look it up.
And then try and find any other conditioning book in specific sports. Not here's how to condition based on S&C, here's how to condition based on this sport. So look at marathon runners, look at rugby league athletes, look at boxers, like how do they condition in each sport, and and even athletics specifically, and how does that correlate to your sport and what you're doing? Can you find similarities? Can you find that that's going to work for your sport? So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much for your time, Kurt. Where would people find you if they want to work with you? Obviously, a wealth of knowledge, and not only in S&C, guys. This is like, we had a bit of live talk on the way here.
A bunch of different things. So I like talking philosophy. So yeah. Pretty much revolveathletic.com, or if you want to find me on socials, it's kurtvogel.coach. On Instagram, or kurtvogel_coach on Twitter, and then through there you can find all my other links. So yeah, or Revolve Athletic on Instagram as well. So yeah.
Yeah, cool. Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Kurt.
Cheers. like when we think about like coaching and that too, we might create systems like cool. You got to master the systems too, and you got to master what you do. You got to master your craft, and I think we forget about mastering our craft a lot. We focus on what's the next journey, what's the next adventure, what's the next thing we're going to do. I mean, I've got a lot of things going on, but you know, I know there's certain things I've missed out on and missed. What's the word? Investing in as well. So I'll get to a point where I will invest in them more again, and then you can master your craft again. Like, so yeah.
I think that's the same sentiment to saying like as much as I feel like there's so much to learn, and so I've done quite a bit of
City. That's pretty cool.
yeah. Done quite a bit of courses, and I think now I'm at the point where I just need to sit down and absorb, like redo all of the stuff that I've done, and actually let it absorb a little bit more instead of like go into this chasing your own tail into doing another course and then jumping from one course to another.
Yeah.